Chapter 2, Ellipses and Round Forms. Alright, so next we're going to get into these rounded forms, which have curved surfaces. So if you see here with the cylinder, we have an important shape, which is the circle, that connects and kind of unifies what these rounded forms are about. Now if you look with the sphere, obviously a circle in shape, and it's basically made of infinite circles. So if you look here with the equator kind of cut out, so you got like this bowl shape, and it's fairly flat, but you got a 2D circle in there. So the same thing with the cone. You've got that ellipse that goes throughout from one end to the other. So before we can actually start drawing these curved forms, we have to understand something about a circle. So with the circle, when it is drawn in perspective or at a slightly different angle, so just like a square, where it starts to look like a diamond shape based off of the angle, a circle has a shape called an ellipse. Now an ellipse is again just a circle in perspective. So if you look here, the cylinder with onto the camera, it's very, just a full circle shape. But as soon as we start to tilt it, it gets narrower and narrower. Now that is basically the ellipse. And depending on the type of angle that we see it at, just like this one, it's just pretty much flat. It'll start to have a different degree depending on how we turn it. When you start practicing drawing ellipses, we're going to do the same thing like we did in the week 1, drawing some circle as an exercise. You're going to continue with a circular motion, touch down, and try to find a degree in which you can draw these ellipses. So just kind of go around the page and try a few that are narrow or wider, closer to a circle. So practicing these ellipses will help you with drawing these forms. Okay, so one thing to understand about a circle is it basically fits within a square. So if we were to draw a rectangle, an ellipse will not fit in there because it's not a circle, right? It's more of an oval. So that's one common mistake or misunderstanding we need to correct ourselves, is that an oval and a circle, are basically not the same thing, which means an ellipse is not an oval. So an oval is sort of a more like egg shape, or kind of just a different rounded form. So the thing about ovals is it's basically just a different type of rounded shape. And that means that an ellipse is very specific to a circle, which means it has these geometrical symmetries to it that we need to understand. So from here, I'm drawing a cross, which is basically the minor and major axis. So we're not going to get too in-depth with it, but those are the things to keep in mind when we're drawing these ellipses. And all 4 of these quadrants have to be pretty much equal. Now, when we have a box on its side, we can do the same construction by finding the center, which is by drawing an X and then the cross. Okay, so once you have that construction, you can then fit an ellipse into that square. So for those of you that have a bit more perspective experience, you can draw some ellipses into some box or square planes. But from here, I just want to see a page of ellipses to warm up, so that way we can really draw these rounded forms. Just remember to take your time and do the same techniques we've been doing since week 1 and try to get the hang of the flow just like we did with these circles. Now that we've got some warm-ups and understanding ellipses a bit, we're going to go ahead and actually draw these forms now. So for the first one, we're starting with a cone. So start off with an ellipse, just like you see here. So the thing about the cone is it has that main ellipse on the bottom, and then the sides are basically triangular in silhouette. But just like the pyramid, what we're going to do is try to find the center first in order to construct this. Now, if you remember from the pyramid, we had to find the center of the square on the bottom in order to construct the rest of it. So we're going to do the same thing, and for now you can eyeball the center of the ellipse. Draw the perpendicular line, and this will dictate on how tall your cone will be. So from the edges, just mark it off, and then you could draw the rest of the silhouette for this cone in order to finish drawing the rest of the form. So starting off with an ellipse, you can also draw the major axis like this with the minor axis in the middle. So that's the shorter side. So finding the center, you can make a dot and then draw the rest of the cone accordingly. Now if you look here, if you tilt the cone little by little, we can also start to try different degrees of ellipses. So as you see here, this one is a bit rounder, but I'm going to keep it to the side, make sure that it's perpendicular, and construct it accordingly. Now when we have these cones, we are drawing through with the ellipse, so we have to do a little bit of line quality and determine what's in the front and what's not being seen, kind of like drawing those boxes like they're made out of glass. So I'm going back in here and darkening up the line in the front to show that the line here in the back is the light one, which is the part we don't see. And then the dark line is, of course, the one in front. So drawing another ellipse here, we can do the opposite, where we are looking at the bottom of the cone. And the construction is basically the same thing. However, whatever line I'm emphasizing, so I'm going to draw 4 dashes here in order for me to connect that ellipse with darker lines. So just like the curve exercise that we did the first week, you can punch up that line quality. So here we basically have the bottom of the cone just tilting away. And you could always come back in and erase some of that construction line or lighten it up. That way it's really clear to the viewer how this form is supposed to read. So I encourage everyone to start this off with some pencils, and then once you get comfortable, you can try a few with a ballpoint pen or even one of those felt tip pens. So try a whole page of cones, varying in degrees. And then once you do that, you're going to go back in and draw some extra ellipses on the inside and center of these cones. So with a light pencil or a light ballpoint pen, just kind of go back in here and practice the ellipse exercise, drawing through and putting some ellipses inside. So these are great to do if we need to draw some stripes or just really understand the form of a cone a little bit more. And again, so I'm drawing these contour lines on the outside and darkening them to show that this is what the viewer is supposed to see that's in the front. Okay, so try a page of cones before moving on to the next form. All right, so moving on to the next rounded form, we have here a cylinder. Now this one's very common, and again, we see this pretty much everywhere on our daily lives. And the main thing is we have, two symmetrical or even circles on both ends. So basically when we're drawing these, you can start off with an ellipse. Just like a box, we can mark off the edges with some straight lines. And then that's where we can draw the second ellipse. When we have these ellipses in here, just like the cone, we're also going to be thinking about what's in front and what's not being shown. So after drawing through, we're going to punch in some line quality and darken up these curves. So with this ellipse, I'm looking up at it, so we only see the front edge on top, but we'll see the rest of the bottom, so I'm darkening the ellipse on the bottom of the cylinder. And then from there, don't forget the edges of the cylinder to darken that line quality up. So here, just again marking out the 4 quadrants using the curve exercise